Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Seeing what Cooper Kupp did last year, him getting close to the record, just him being so open so many times, is a lot of things on film that I watched, I looked at, that I'm excited about this year. And even being in the meetings with him and him talking over schemes and different things that he did with the Rams, things that he planned on doing with us, is very exciting. I'm definitely excited to start the season right now.
And we're excited for Purple Access. Judd Zulgad, Star Tribune sports columnist, my buddy Chip Scoggins, executive producer Declan Goff. As you heard at the top of this show, sponsored by our friends at TCL TV and also presented by Surly Brewing Company. Don't forget April 28th, 2 weeks from the day we are recording this, the first Purple Daily Surly draft party at the Surly Brew Hall, at which Before I Die beer, especially brewed beer for that night, will be available. And plenty of excitement. Doors open at 3 and we start at 6. All right, Chip Scoggins. I want to start with the guy that we just heard from as the Vikings offseason program is underway now, which basically is probably more classroom stuff at this point. But Justin Jefferson, one is, do you agree with me in a positive way? He looks thicker. I think he looks bigger. I think he looks like he's put on weight up top. His arms looked a bit more jacked. And he looks like he has purposefully gotten himself stronger.
Yeah, he doesn't look as wiry.
Right.
As he has been. And that's just age and being in part of the strength program for a couple more years. But no, he said he looks and feels great. And a lot of interesting comments have come out of the first real player access since the coaching change and now they're back for off season. But it was interesting. I thought a couple points that Jefferson made. One, the Cooper Kupp. He paid attention to how they used him. Two, he seemed excited to have an offensive-minded head coach that's that's running their meeting rooms every day.
Yep.
And yes, he has paid attention to the contracts that wide receivers have gotten here this offseason. So as well he should. So, but no, the thing that struck me in listening to all the players that came through the interview room was there seems to be a new lease on life and just a clear the air, which you would expect when you have a coaching change, but they all seem enthused by what the environment they have walked into.
What's your take on that? I'm very mixed because I will continue to say I was on the bandwagon of Spielman and Zimmer should be fired. So I was all for it. But I find it a little bit disingenuous now that to a man, it's like, whoo, God, man, new culture, glad they're gone. And I guess here's where I'm a little frustrated. One is I think Mike was part of the problem, but to paint it as Mike was the only problem, I think is ridiculous. The second thing, Chip, that frustrates me is this one. If things were this bad, veterans could have spoken up. If you don't keep your mouth shut and be a guy like Kendricks, dude, you carry weight. So if things are terrible, tell somebody. And you can't just, it's why the whole thing of, we just come to work and we're doing our job. And then to be like, but I'm glad he's gone. A young player, totally get that. You're not going to speak up. A veteran player, it's a little bit frustrating now to act like, well, now the problem's gone.
Yeah, I still think it is hard because and we said this, and I don't want to keep just piling on Zim, but there was a lot of tension. And when things went bad, there was tension in that building. And you heard it privately. You sort of knew that when the temperature got turned up internally, people got uncomfortable, right? And so I think it's probably easier just to keep your mouth shut and come to work and maybe be miserable in silence, so to speak. I just think that's the NFL culture. It's just don't speak out if you're unhappy. But yeah, could they have voiced some of this? Some of the things that they felt last year while it was going on. I guess, but I just don't think that's sort of the way most NFL players go about it.
I guess my frustration with it is this: it clearly affected them. Like they are basically saying it affected our play, like it affected our performance. And if it did, this is why I was in favor of the next step being significant locker room changes. Because if it affected your performance and you did nothing, that doesn't help the locker room. Like a Kendricks, I think, has to step up, or a guy who is, or like a Kirk has to step up and say, for the good of the team and my young teammates, something needs to be said here. And if Mike was the tyrant that he's coming off at and they did nothing, this is why I've been saying you've got to shake up the locker room too, because you don't want people who are going to, as you said, rightfully so, come to work and be like, oh, okay. I mean, Pat Bev, for instance, would have kicked some ass, which is what I want. I want that guy. I don't want a bunch of guys who are like, well, because Chip, 5 games in, if things aren't going well, this group is going to pull the same act, which is, well, we're not going well. So like, I want some fire. I want some pushback. And this team, to a man, feels like it doesn't have that. Harrison Smith leads, but he doesn't lead that way. And I just feel like they don't have that. They still are lacking a chemistry that is necessary for success in sports.
Well, or that guy, maybe not chemistry. I think they generally like each other, but you're talking about that kind of that galvanizing Pat Bev type guy. And
I want those guys.
Typically should be your quarterback, but that's not Cousins. That's not his personality.
Right.
I do think Jefferson has some of that in him. I think Dalvin has some of that in him.
Yeah.
Kind of that personality that's willing to speak up and kind of be the focal point. So I think they do have it. Just, I honestly think it was so dysfunctional last year at the end with Zimmer and Spielman not talking, and Zimmer, the conversation about is he going to keep his job, not his job. And I just think it was so dysfunctional. It was probably beyond hope, or beyond fixing. But it's they clearly feel like, and it's only been a week, but and typically we hear a lot of this stuff when players come back for the first time. They haven't seen each other in a couple months. They've been off on vacation. They're happy to be back around each other.
Right.
So some of that's normal anyways, but I do get the sense that everybody was ready for a fresh start and something different.
Mm-hmm. On Jefferson, I want your prediction here. So he's going into year 3. His contract is a 4-year contract, but as a first-round pick, it's got an option for year 5. Mm-hmm. He's eligible for an extension in May of 23, which is a year from this May. What's your prediction here as far as how this is going to play out? Because I've heard some are like, well, he signed for a long time, but like his rookie contract, he's not looking at these contracts right now and thinking, I'll get mine in 3 years. Yeah. He's probably identified May of 23 as it's time to get mine. What's your prediction here? Because I don't think that he's too good for this just to be an easy, we'll wait till your 5th year option is expired to really address this.
And that's the thing. It's like, if they play that game, like we'll just, because, hey, we got control and then we'll pick up his 5th year option. You do that with, your normal players, right? I mean, you don't do that with your superstar and a guy who's so valuable to your franchise and your most popular player and one of the best receivers. I would assume that if he has the kind of year like he's been doing and stays on this trajectory, that they will do it next offseason. I just think be proactive in one of these things and show him, how valuable and meaningful he is to the organization. So I would guess that you would do it sooner rather than later, even though you don't have to. Mm-hmm. With his contract, you don't have to, but I think in a situation like this, it's in the best interest that you do. Yeah. And so, because the numbers he's putting up and just what he means to you, he's outperforming the contract. And we've seen it where if a guy does that 2-3 years, you get rewarded for that.
Yeah. And I feel like the Vikings have been proactive there. So I don't,
Sure.
I guess I'm not saying that I think this is going to be a Vikings problem. I think that this assumption that, oh, he signed for is like, no, he signed, but he's not going to be pleased. And I mean, to what he was saying in his press conference, I think that he did on Tuesday, and he's exactly right about this. That position now is being paid astronomically.
Yeah.
And there's a premium put on the best players there, which is probably very, very fair, but it's not one where I don't think if you are Justin Jefferson, you're going to look at what Devontae got paid and think, oh, someday. You're going to say as soon as possible. And I think,
Yeah.
you know what? He's justified.
And he's justified. Yeah. And it's hard to think when you look at his numbers, he's going to be more of a focal point of the offense. But with O'Connell's offense, he's talking about Cooper Kupp. I think there is a next level for Justin Jefferson to get to. Conversely, I'm curious. We saw Dalvin, and Dalvin is excited. He switched to number 4, and he feels like, hey, you're going to see a new Dalvin because to his credit, I mean, I'm sure it is meaningful to him. He says, Dad, that's the number his dad and brother. Everybody recognized him. He said, I didn't realize this, that everybody in the organization called him 4 anyways, because that's kind of how he was associated.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see that part.
Like because that was his number until he got here, that everybody always, they call him 4 in the locker room. So it's meaningful to him, but I am very curious to see how O'Connell fits Dalvin into his offense in terms of, because I don't think it's going to be, like Zim, we're going to ride Dalvin and we're going to be a run-based offense, and but how he uses them,
right?
It's going to be fascinating to me.
I agree completely. I think that there's different ways he made. So Cook, who has definitely, in fairness, been a part of the passing game, but he made a reception. I think it was in the primetime game against the Steelers at US Bank Stadium last season. I think he made a reception over the middle in traffic that was incredible. Like, it was a high skill catch. And that's where I'm curious if he's going to be incorporated now. See, if you go back and look, there's such a huge difference between a receiver being truly part of the passing game and a check down option.
Yeah.
And so what I'm curious about is Dalvin going to become a bigger part of the overall game plan outside of the check downs, outside of the Kirk's in trouble, here's the ball. And I would agree with you. I think the run game is going to remain fundamentally incredibly important to this offense. But yeah, there's a difference in how you use guys and philosophy, which I think is going to be completely changed, especially from what Clint Kubiak did or didn't do in 2021.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, you would have to think that O'Connell, I mean, he's been around some, great offensive minds, and he probably is himself, that you look at a guy like Dalvin, like, okay, this guy's uniquely talented, right? Just a special talent. Let's figure out how to get the best out of that. And whether it's, take some of the carries off them and use them as a wide receiver, as a receiving option. I have to think that they're going to find, creative ways to use your best talent versus.
Yes.
And that's the thing we heard from Thielen, definitely, I think Cousins too, that there's more freedom in this offense, and it's early, it's 2 days in the offseason, so they haven't seen the whole thing, but they get the sense that there's going to be more freedom within the offense for players to kind of maximize what they do well.
Yeah.
And more freedom for Kirk to have autonomy at the, not autonomy, but more leeway at the line. We'll see how that translates.
Correct.
But it's, it just speaks to how rigid Zim was with his offense. And we're going to do it this way. And this is what I want. So I think, and that, Judd, that might be the key. We've talked about it for 2 darn years. There's too much talent on an offense for them to finish 12th in scoring. It's ridiculous.
And this is going to come down to a few things. And one is that Kirk is going to have to take chances. Kirk's going to have to make throws he hates making, and if he doesn't, it's going to be trouble. Like the check down, the check down by default. Which, see, this is the thing that we're going to find out. how much of this was Zimmer and how much of this was Mike not wanting Kirk to make mistakes and Kirk agreeing with that?
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing, Judd. If it's that,
Mhm.
can O'Connell coach that out of him?
I know.
You know,
Sounds
can,
like
can
Colin to
he
me.
can he coach out the temptation to play it safe? And but it's so weird because we saw it for what stretches where last year, the middle of the season, where it was cut it loose, Kirk. Right? It was,
Right.
I'm taking chances. I'm throwing the ball down the field, and I'm
Right.
not going to get in trouble. But who was it that was it? I think it was Thielen at the end of his press conference was basically saying that, there is this freedom that guess what, you're going to make mistakes and live with it and deal with it and move on to the next thing. And
Right.
Zim said all those things last year, but you never really knew if he believed it, if it was, because a game later he'd tell that sideline reporter, we're throwing it too much, at halftime or whatever.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see if that is, which we think it is, Cousins' kind of DNA to play it safe and not take as many. If O'Connell can coach it out of him, pull something else out of him that to get him to take more chances.
So I do think that the skill position players offensively are fantastic. Like, I really like them. I think we have to go in with some assumptions until proven wrong. One is Cook is going to get hurt at some point. He always does. So like until he plays, well, now 17 games, but until he plays an entire year, I don't think you can take enough work off him that he doesn't get hurt. I mean, he plays a position that's just awful as far as the pounding. The second thing is, as much as I like Irv Smith, I'm assuming he's going to miss time at some point. The other thing, and this is where it's see to me, this is what I'm so curious to see, and I'm glad Mike's gone now because like now it's on the players completely, Chipper. The other thing that's going to be so intriguing, along with Kirk being cut loose and told it's imperative you make mistakes. I've said this. If I was O'Connell, I would call Kirk in and I would put in front of him Stafford stats and I would circle picks and say, I didn't have a problem with this.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with
yeah.
I didn't have a problem with this, and you're going to throw these. But the other thing that's going to be so intriguing with Thielen is this one. This is now Thielen is going to be important, very important at times, but he's also now clear cut the number 2 guy here. Like, so this is everything I do, like offensively outside of Kirk. Everything I do is geared towards the success of one guy starting off with. Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of intrigue with Mike out of the equation now, Chipper. There's going to be a lot of intrigue for how guys handle the fact that like the days of, hey, it's Diggs and Thielen. Those are long gone. It's Jefferson. Oh, and Adams good too, but it's Jefferson.
Yeah. And it can't be so, we're locking in on this guy in there, because he's going to get double. But it is interesting. I'm sure O'Connell came in and told him, here's what we did with Cooper Kupp. Look at his stats. Just look at the production. And I'm going to bring the same thing and have the same mindset for you that you're going to have that kind of presence. That doesn't mean we're going to ignore Adam Thielen because you can't have it that way. You got to have other options. But think about the attention and everything that Cooper Kupp became last year.
Right.
Heck, Justin Jefferson has already put up historic numbers first 2 years anyway. So, but as I say, I think there is a next step for him. And I think O'Connell's is coming in with that mindset.
So O'Connell actually went through that exact scenario from the Super Bowl, I believe, or it might have been the conference title game. No, it was the Bengals game. And this is what's intriguing. So basically the Bengals said what teams said to the Vikings about Jefferson, which is we are not going to let him beat us. What the Rams said is, okay, cool. So after about a quarter plus of this, they motion Kupp because you can't, the only way to double a guy successfully, consistently is to know what that guy is going to do. Right.
Yeah.
So Kupp got moved around. And by doing that, they freed him up at times. So that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, it's not the old, well, they're taking Jefferson away. So now we're going to throw to Thielen, or Irv Smith. They're taking Jefferson away, so everyone's going to try to help Jefferson. And that's where like this is going to get like, it's so easy in the spring to talk a big game, right?
Sure.
Got more freedom. Zimmer was the bad guy. But when you start the season and it's like, oh no, there's really one star here and the rest of you are important. That's when it gets to be intriguing, because egos get involved and different things start to come into play. I'm just saying, like, I am very excited to see what Justin Jefferson can do. And then the rest of it to me is trickle down from them.
Yeah. And you would think that O'Connell, having been there with Sean McVay and gone through that they figured out how to scheme guys open, even when there's a bullseye on them. Right. I mean, you think the second half of last year, teams weren't saying, okay, we got to come in and figure out Kupp. They're going to throw the ball to him. We know it. We got to figure it out. And they still were successful in doing it. So it's just being creative in how you do it. And that's where I think this coaching staff, has the knowledge and the willingness to do that versus just, I mean, that's the thing that used to drive me crazy when Cousins says, well, I just take me where the reads tell me to take. No. Okay.
Right. Correct.
No.
And you'll be told not to now.
Yeah. Have your read take you to Jefferson.
Right. Well, and we're going to free him up.
Yeah.
And if anybody comes back and says, I was open, you say, I'm working with 18 right now, so be quiet. Yeah, no, but I mean, but Chip, I mean, how many, and football to me is the poster child for exactly this. How many times have we covered mini camps, OTAs, into training camp where a guy's a new guy, right? Yeah, I got in trouble, but now I'm a new guy. Or I am on board with what we do no matter what it means. And then we get into like week 4 and the guy's like, I'm not really on board with this at all. So like, this is what I find to be just so intriguing. And like, we've seen this before and covered it. And it's definitely different right now to say, this is great. And then in, September 20th to be like, this ain't so great.
Yeah, there has to be the fall through, right? I mean, it has to be what they're saying now and stick with it. But I do think the fact that there's a relationship with O'Connell and Cousins, and the fact that, you can tell me that him and Zimmer were meeting once a week. There was no relationship. I'm sorry.
100%.
And there was no understanding, and so will that lead to different results? Will that help Cousins? It can't hurt, help Cousins come out of, or find another, the willingness and the ability to improvise more, to have more freedom, to not worry about making mistakes. He's going to get screamed at by Zim or whatever. We'll see, but it certainly is positive, I think, that he has this relationship with the coach and he feels comfortable with him.
And to be clear, too, I'm not talking about Kirk. I'm talking about the skill position guys who are going to ultimately be important decoys at times.
Yeah,
so like, I'm talking about the guys who are, because I am curious what guys can do.
Yeah,
but there's only one guy who I think can be a superstar, and that's 18.
But there has to be, along those lines. It's like, to circle back on Dalvin, it's like there has to be a certain number of touches for him. I mean, because he's not, you're not paying him to be a decoy, and he's his talent is such that he's not a decoy. He's got to be a fairly significant part of the offense, I would think, right?
Yes, he does, but he's still not my most important guy.
No, I still think Jefferson is. I mean, he's your, but that's the the question for O'Connell is like, how do you fit, which Dalvin is a huge piece of it, into that equation,
To be fair, when I say Rams offense 2021, give me 2 names.
Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp.
Correct. That's the point.
Like
that's the ultimate point. I mean, Cook, I agree. Dalvin's a marvelous player, but the thing about it is, I also, if I'm being realistic with myself and my coaching staff, when I sit down, I want Cook to be important, but I'm also saying, I'm assuming he's going to be hurt at some point. So like that, and that doesn't take away from the position. There's positional importance there. But I'm just saying, JJ's he's durable, looks bigger. And I mean, there's something to be said from day one, not missing time. I give Kirk credit there. Kirk Cousins, if he's done one thing, he plays. Aside from COVID, he plays.
Well, is it any coincidence that Jefferson said he wants the season to start right now? I think he knows.
Yeah, no.
I think he knows what's about to happen in terms of balls coming his way, the routes he's going to get to run, his impact on the offense, which has already been big. So it's not like this is a guy who had an okay start to his career and now is going to jump up. I mean, you're talking about historic numbers, and now, but you're bringing in a guy who can elevate that even more.
Jefferson's the one guy too. So, and I'll just say this. I probably qualify as a Jefferson stan based on the sense that I think he's one of the few guys with that team who's completely, if this makes sense, sincere. Like I felt for him last year when he didn't get the ball, when KJ Osborne caught, I felt bad for him. It's like this guy is, because I think he's a good kid, and I think he's sincere. And I don't think he's jaded. And I really I feel the same way about him that I do Ant.
That is, you stole the words right out of my mouth. I mean, to me, he is Ant. Like the more he has the ball, you just feel like something special is going to happen. And there's the passion, the love, the greatness, the desire to be the best, the belief that he's the best. Like those two guys, when they walk on the field, they think they're the best players. And it's not like arrogance. It's just like, I'm better than you. And
right.
But it's a
joy.
But it's not a something that rubs you the wrong way. It's just like, hey, these guys are so good and so supremely talented that you want to make them the focal point of what you're doing.
And the plan, of course, on April 28th, which is 2 weeks from the night that we are recording this, is for the Vikings to improve that talent in the first round of the draft. Right now, they have the 12th pick. And I'm telling you right now, Chip Scoggins, I hope that you stick to what you said last week, which is you're going to join us for an appearance at the Surly Brew Hall, where for no admission, you can come watch a live Purple Daily show. Doors open at Surly at 3:00. We start at 6. Surly is brewing a beer for that night in particular called Before I Die, which of course is the mission of all Vikings fans. Before you die, you want to see what? A Super Bowl championship. Again, doors open at 3, no admission charge. We'll be doing a live podcast that will start at 6:00. We'll have a microphone and camera there for fans to chime in with their thoughts. It's essentially going to be a live vent line, and my friend Chip Scoggins has said that he will attend as well. So we look forward to your analysis, and yes, you will get a free beverage, if not two, of Before I Die Surly Brew. How does that sound, Chipper?
I will be there, and I want to try that before I die. Everything they make is great. Everything they make is
I know,
great.
it's just golden. And also up for grabs, we will be giving away a TCL TV as well.
Woo.
So April 28th, Thursday, join us at Surly Brew Hall for a no admission charge Purple Daily Draft Party. All right, last thing. Kirk Cousins said at his access, I want to retire a Viking. Odds you think that Kirk Cousins, who would probably need one more contract after this current one, will retire a Viking, Chipper?
They better make a deep playoff run in the next 2 years. Then, if they were to do that, then you would be justified in doing it. If they don't, I think you obviously you move on and start over. So, I don't necessarily think they're built to make that run right now. It's it's interesting. I mean, what's he gonna say? I don't want to be here.
Right? Yeah, I thought that. I want out.
It's something everybody says, but anytime Cousins says something, it makes news like that. But for that to happen, and he even followed it up with, I have to earn that right, which he knows. Just being a fringe playoff team, maybe squeaking in, losing, that's not going to get it done. They have to make a deep playoff run.
I'm curious if he ever has to play as a Viking, Chip, with a guy that would be considered close to competition. So like are they going to draft a quarterback potentially in the first round in 2023, a year from April, where there is a threat because the one thing he has never had here ever, and in fact, I think that they bent over backwards not to do it, was to ever have a backup quarterback who actually could replace him if he wasn't playing well.
Well, no, because you're not going to pay a guy $35 million and say, you might win the job, you might not. I mean, they're not going to have that, So, and there's nobody, if you draft a guy this year, next year, he's not going to come in and take his job. And there's no way in heck you're going to pay a guy, and of Cousins' salary and his stature
Right.
and just where he's at in his career. I mean, a rookie's not going to come in and outperform him,
Right.
So that won't happen. But it'll be, if they've decided that, somebody will come in for a redshirt season, and then you move on.
Chipper, great stuff. I'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the Wolves playoff run and much more. Talk to you
later. All right, brother. We'll see.
Enjoy your Surly. Bye.